Well, the Deputy Justice, Mr. Andries Nel, at the Athlone Magistrate's Court today, I understand, after a man was shot dead while going into the court building on Friday morning. Police say they believe gang violence is part of this. The man who fired the shots was able to get away. Alison Tilley is the coordinator at the organisation Judges Matter. Alison, good afternoon to you. In my experience, when you go into a courtroom, you go through some kind of security, but outside court, obviously, there's nothing there, and that must make people going in and coming out incredibly vulnerable.
Yes, and I think we have raised this issue before. Magistrates have said themselves in surveys that security is either non-existent or poor outside of the court in 71% of those surveyed. So I think we know that security outside of the court is problematic. I'm afraid to say it's inside the court as well, where people are concerned about the actual security levels, either in the court building or inside the courtroom itself. So it's not just, and you say correctly, there is security, but it doesn't seem to be creating a sense of safety in the people inside and around court buildings.
I mean, one of the problems is if you have security outside the court building, what we're usually talking about is people who are involved, implicated, suspects, lawyers involved in some way with a case of violent criminality. And at some point they have to enter the courtroom. So you could have security outside the court, but at some point they will still have to leave that sort of protective shield. It's quite a difficult problem to get around.
It is, and I think one of the ways that we've talked about it is people enter witness protection. But unfortunately, witness protection really applies to a very, very small number of people who are entering courts. You often have people who are not necessarily directly involved in a case and that their family of people who are accused or witnesses, and they equally come from environments where there are ongoing disputes in those communities, and that puts them at risk as well.
So, I mean, the only other way I can see it is for, there to be police escorts. The people involved would meet at a particular police station, no one else would know. But, I mean, the police don't have time and the money to do that.
Well, I'm afraid it's not just that, but there are concerns about the police and the role of the police in the courts, and what we have is magistrates saying that they are concerned that the police are in fact corrupt. So, there's a question mark over whether the police would be able to safely and, without concerns about corruption, be able to take care of people. We're also looking at magistrates, for example, outside of the courts at home, needing protection there. And again, the concern about whether that kind of protection can be bought. So I think it's a multi-layered problem and is reflective of very high levels of very violent crime in our communities.
Generally speaking, I mean, our courts are underfunded, their systems don't always work, paperwork can be lost. Should we be spending a lot more money on our courts more generally? I realise every budget is under pressure, but the Justice Ministry, which is really supposed to manage the budgets for our courts, I don't get the sense that really there is enough money going into the administration of our courts. Some of it, we can maybe have better systems, more online, etc. But in the end, security is a part of the court system, and we would need more money for that.
Yes, I think we know that the courts are underfunded, and it ranges across things like salaries to infrastructure and maintaining infrastructure and issues like security. You rightly point to the question about dockets and dockets disappearing, and there has been an effort to put the systems online in the theory that there will be then less opportunity to make a docket disappear, but it remains an issue. And if you look at the NPA, if you look at the other parts of the court system, because it's not just magistrates or prosecutors, it's everybody who's in that infrastructure. We can see that that it really is unraveling at the seams. It simply, the more resources simply cannot be delayed any longer.
Is there any sense of urgency? I mean, I would like to think that the Justice Ministry is aware of all of this, that we might get some response, I mean, financially. I imagine they'll do what many departments do, and I don't blame them for this. They'll have to say, well, it's up to the Finance Minister, and he'll say, well, I don't have any money. My concern, Alison, is that you and I could be having this conversation again in a year's time.
I think we've just been asked today about a court which has a witness who is having to give evidence in a foreign language, in this case in Urdu, and no interpreter is available because there's not money for interpreters. So we are literally seeing the court proceedings in that matter grind to a halt. That's one of the areas where we're just told there isn't sufficient money. And we're just not going to have interpreters in these kinds of cases. It simply can't go on. Your courts are not able to function under these circumstances. And, you know, we're looking more deeply into what courts are able to do, particularly in relation to corruption. But what we can say now is that they are clearly underfunded, and there doesn't seem to be a realistic plan that will fix that.
In the meantime, there's another issue, Alison, which, I mean, we've been watching play out in sort of slow motion over the last 20 years, is that our population has been growing, and that would mean you need more courts. And we actually haven't grown the number of courts or the number of judges. If I recall, I think former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke made this point in one of his books. The number of judges hasn't grown, and the number of courtrooms hasn't grown for what we need.
Well, I think we have had a few more courts added in the High Court, because we've had each of the provincial capitals has a court now, a High Court, and we have added certainly there's been some upgrades in some buildings to give us more courtrooms, but it hasn't kept pace. We have 250 judges for the country, and that includes judges at the Supreme Court of Appeal, the Constitutional Court, the Competition Court, the Labour Appeal Court. So all of those specialist courts, leaving judges to get on with unmanageable roles, and we're looking for court dates in 3, 4, and 5 years' time. So if you are in the middle of a labour dispute in a High Court or a matrimonial matter, you are just going to have to wait it out until there is a judge available. And in these kinds of matters, you can't go to an arbitrator, and you can't afford one to start with. But in family law matters, you know, you can't use arbitrators. You have to use the courts. So it's, you know, there's no options available. And that's a really, really troubling situation.
I mean, all of this is just going to get worse and worse. So then people will, in civil matters, opt out of the court system if they can, as you point out, which leaves only criminal matters, which is where the very serious cases around violence need to be dealt with. I mean, we have to see things happen in open court. There are very important reasons for that. And we're going to have more cases like the one we had at the Athlone Magistrates Court on Friday.
I can't see any reason for the situation to improve, either in the short term or the long term. We simply aren't spending enough, and until we do that, I'm afraid the status quo will continue.
Thank you very much indeed, Alison Tilley, the coordinator at Judges Matter. Very, very sobering conversation.